It's great to be here today.
Wow.
Good evening, everyone from Singapore. But Michael, where you are, what time is it?
Toronto,
Toronto, Canada.
I love my time in Singapore, by the way.
Right.
Oh, it was great. Met so many nice, smart people. So hospitable.
You were here? Which year?
2007, I did a project with one of the agencies there. Not because I was the world's smartest resiliency expert, because my model, though, got people engaged. So that's my whole mission about my resiliency work, is I want to grab them by the intellectual scruff of the neck if they're not paying attention and say, hey, you, the one having trouble, over here, go this way, do some of this. If it doesn't help you enough, you need an expert other than me.
Bill, I think your topic is right up Singapore's alley. We're always talking about being resilient, like being so tiny.
I think both of you have lots in common to talk about, because Dr. Julia is a psychologist.
Yes, well,
patients, especially during this period of time.
It's really a tough time with the pandemic, because we've lost our social interaction, and Zoom is wonderful, and I'm really honored I get to talk to people, but I really like to talk to my 90-year-old neighbor face to face, because he's really interesting, and he used to travel the world as a CEO, so he's lived life many ways. And as he likes to tease, because he likes to pretend to put on airs and be special. I've been to the list of countries I haven't traveled to for work are shorter than the ones I've been to. And that's his way of saying, boy, have I traveled a lot. But he's also got the courage to say, after 3 or 4 years of CEO, my wife said, you and I need to talk. If you're going to go to these countries, you're going to start to take me. And then after a couple of trips, she said, that's nice we went to these countries, but what's the use of having a life if you're not enjoying it? Because work makes Jack a dull boy. So she convinced them, and the board agreed, because she made them take it to the board, that they should have 1 to 2 days of personal time on these trips. Because she said, you're putting in 12-hour days plus travel time when you're working. So it's not like you're slacking. So if I'm going to go with you and there's a museum down the road from the hotel, we're going to the museum. So he's always offering up sage advice on life. So he's 90 going on 50. If my mind's that sharp at 70, in a few years, I'll have won the lottery. So yes, I agree. Now, my eyesight. It's Dr. Lim, right?
Yeah, Julia, just call me Julia.
Okay, Julia. Yeah. So it's nice to have these people of different ages around me. I have a 15-year-old, 1 floor up. I live in a tower. He's so smart. Oh, so having conversations with him, but it's kind of hard to do with masks and 6 feet apart, but you do what you can.
Yeah.
Michael, we would like to welcome you officially.
Okay.
We had a little bit of glitches just now. So Michael is our new friend. And in fact, for the last 2 days, I've been spending a lot of time trying to get to know him through his videos and some of his past interviews and all that. And also we talk about resiliency. This is really a very important subject, especially for now. And Michael Ballard is from Toronto, Canada. He's an inspirational keynote speaker, storyteller, coach, and trainer. Now, Michael, would you like to tell us more about yourself, and also, later on, how it actually got you to pay a lot of attention about resiliency?
I'd love to. I got interested in behavior of people really early. At 6 years old, give or take, riding my little bicycle, and a little 4-year-old ran in front of me. Now I was riding it well enough that I could steer around her and not hurt her, but I wasn't riding it well enough to slow down and stop. So I was living in the country. I went down the ditch, hit the mud, hit a rock, and I learned to fly very poorly. Then I hit my head on the rock. So I was blessed that I lived in a country with a children's hospital only 90 minutes away. So my poor father rushed home in 45 minutes, and 45 minutes later, drove me down to the kids' hospital. And mother said years later, It's the only time your father drove so fast that when we went over the railway tracks, we caught air. My dad's passed, but he was a very sensible driver. Anyways, for 3 days, I had a massive headache and faded in and out of consciousness. And in the second day, I got a roommate. He also had a concussion on the front of his head. And I had a massive headache and my eyes hurt, my ears ached, my neck ached. And I wanted everybody to, could you whisper, please? Could you turn the lights out? Can I have a glass of water? Well, my roommate, and I learned as an adult, it's very normal for his behavior. He yelled, screamed, and shouted. Why was only his mother there? Where were his grandparents? Where were his other grandparents? Well, this was the 60s. One set of grandparents were in Arizona coming up from the winter there, and the other were in Florida coming up from the winter. They were driving. There was no cell phones. There was pay phones. It was expensive. So you'd phone saying, we're coming up. Here's our route. We'll call you when we're halfway home. And then that, so that's where the grandparents weren't there yet. And dad was in Europe on business. So again, in the 60s, there was no flights every day. Sometimes it was a flight a week. So mother had telexed through the business to, your son's had an issue, come home when you can. So he was rightfully at 6 or 7 scared, but I was fascinated that two people, similar issues, two widely different responses. So at grade 1 or grade 2, I got really fascinated that Connie and I could have a similar issue, and Connie and I don't deal with it at all in the same way. So that got me started, but like to the point where I, to this day, enjoy sitting, not judging, and just watching people. It's so fascinating. In a game of tennis, I'm the world's worst tennis player, but if you want a game where you're going to laugh a lot and lose some balls, I might be the person you want to play with. I have real control issues, so I can hit the ball, and 1 minute you think I'm related to a famous tennis star out of 100 shots, and 99 shots you think I'm putting you on that nobody can be that bad. But I enjoyed myself because I had time with you. So that got me started. Chronic illness diagnosis at 17. A doctor with good intentions said there's nothing you could do. My house doesn't allow, I grew up in a house where you're not allowed to live in the land of nothing you can do. You can visit it. You can have a momentary setback if there's nothing you can do, but don't live there. So I got some mild despair, and I wouldn't say depression, but I had the blues. I was like, oh man, I got a swollen belly from this disease. I got bleeding. I have to wear fat pants some days because I'm so swollen up with this chronic illness. Luckily, not contagious. And then one day I started giving my head a shake and said, my parents raised me to do better than this. He's a doctor of plumbing. He doesn't know spirit. He doesn't know faith. So there was a new university built down the road. Borrowed the family car on a Saturday, went to the library, said to the librarian, big believer in librarians and librarian technologists. Google's wonderful, but it's not everything. Said the librarian, I'm looking for information about chronic health issues. Oh, funny you should mention it. We just filed some new information away from Harvard. And so then I found out that people from Harvard, that they researched, if they practice what I call resiliency, they call them mind-body skills, potato, that if people practice these skills, they could have 20% less symptoms, 30% cheaper to take care of their health. And I was like, wow, you have my complete attention. So that was it. That was my line in the sand, that I could go to doctors and love them and trust them, but they didn't know everything. Because my gastroenterologist was a cellular gut guy, and that's good, we need them, but they didn't know mental health for chronically ill. And Harvard by then had 3 pieces of major research right back to 1915. I only have one problem with the research, and I'm going to say it because I am one as a white gentleman. The experts had said they discovered it. They made it like they didn't understand that many other cultures had discovered these skills and techniques thousands of years previous. I was blessed that I took Shaolin Kung Fu, so I learned the power of breathing and movement. My 129-pound sensei master had gone to 2 countries to learn martial arts. He'd been to Japan and China, and he said, I'm only just touching the surface. So don't think that this dojo is the end all and be all. Korea, India, African countries, other cultures, they got so much to teach us, and I haven't barely scratched the surface. So he taught me breathing exercises, And I was not a very good martial artist physically, because at 13 to 17, I had not yet started to believe in my body. But he did get me emotionally and intellectually to believe in myself. So it turns out the Harvard research and the Shaolin Kung Fu are aligned. So that was my launch. Within a year, I went 3 years with no symptoms. So it was really fun to go to the medical professional who said, well, under the microscope, you have colitis, but you're showing no symptoms and you're not on any medication. What are you eating? What are you doing? So then I told him, and he was like, well, I heard of it, but our model doesn't support it. And it's like, oh, so not only are some of our doctors really smart, but don't know everything, but now our medical model in Canada doesn't support a well-being process. It's an illness-based process. So by 20, I started to grasp that I had to own my own health and that my mental health had a large control over my physical health, not a cure. And then fast forward at 27, I got my cancer diagnosis, and my surgeon, Dr. Connick, Dr. George P. Connick, since retired, had the courage to, when he was just completing medical school, found out that in Scandinavian countries, they had new surgical techniques that exceeded North American standards that could change the trajectory of cancer bowel patients and kidney patients. So he went back to school for 6 months. You have to understand, I got my grade 12 with difficulties. In the 70s in Canada, if you didn't spell and had bad grammar, you failed. Well, I could pass my college paperwork, but I couldn't pass my exams because I didn't. Spelling for me is a challenge, okay? Grammar is tough. Which is which? And the only one I know I got right is one has a T in it. That's for the hats. That's a witch. The other two witches, I don't know which is which, okay? Seriously, I make fun of myself, but so I was very annoyed and challenged. So my Dr. Connick said to me, Michael, it's like this. If you have the willingness to use your sense of humor, if you have the willingness to discuss your faith, not just with me, but your parents, I know you attend a faith worship center every week, then we have a better chance for you to have a better experience. And there's preliminary hypothesis that maybe even a better outcome. So we didn't call it resiliency, but my doctor was, by some standards, a little outrageous, but with permission from other healthcare professionals, he would say things in the privacy of the room with just 3 of us there. So Michael, today we're going to do a test. And for that, I need a registered licensed nursing professional. Now, I know you're very respectful for all the ladies, but today, just to be distracting, I got you a redhead. So by some standards, unprofessional. It was 1981. I had a little tremor the whole time I was there because I was fighting for my life. And he would say the most ridiculous things, but never crass or rude. He just acknowledged the nurse had red hair. Another time, one of the nurses, I had an IV issue. I was dehydrated. He said, Michael, I got you a specialist. She took my arm. She put my elbow in the middle of her bosom. She said, now don't try to wiggle anything. You'll be in trouble on the floor. But they made me laugh, constantly breaking rules of protocol for high-level respect. But they humanized everything. And I am so thankful because I had a good cry every morning. But for 23 hours of the day, the thing I've learned about resiliency is with resiliency, I own the issue. For an hour a day, cancer owned me. But for 23 hours, I was Michael Ballard. I was married. I had a career. I had family and friends that loved me. I had faith. I used to be a piano player of average skills. So if you're having a festive party, you might say, can you come and play the following 20 songs? And I'd say, I know 12 of them. I can fake 3 of them. You have to find somebody else for the other 3. They're too tough. And so I got asked to go play the piano in the psych ward because you have an uplifting, respectful spirit. So it was really wonderful to talk to 12 to 20 of these people. I did it 3 or 4 times in the 4 weeks I was in. And it was really interesting for perspective because to them, oh, Michael, we all get to go home. We're quite concerned about you being resilient. In my head, I had not said it, but it was like my operating software is working pretty darn good. So I believe I'm going home. Might be just for 6 weeks, but I'm going home. I'm not, and I'm going to win. So being resilient, I had cancer cancer didn't have me most of the time. It's okay for cancer to own you for a while, but not 7 and 24. Cancer cannot rent space in my heart or my head, or neither can my chronic illness.
Well said. Well said.
So that's my basic launch, because that's what got me started. And then it was like, how do I be a bridge so that more people have the courage to see Dr. Julia? How can I be a bridge so that people practice some skills to take the anxiety level down? I just had a neighbor fall because they were dehydrated. And as we waited for the ambulance, they were shaking a good 90, I swear it was 90 beats a second, not 90 beats a minute. Their abdomen was trembling, their foot was trembling. So one of the skills I advocate for everybody is square breathing when you're anxious. And square breathing is I breathe in on 4, coming down the side of a box at 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4. I hold for 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4, and I exhale on the 4. Well, we did it twice. And there she is on the ground, all vulnerable, 84 years old. I'm holding her head so we make sure her neck's secured till the paramedics show up, just to be sure. And she looks at me, goes, "That stuff really works." I said, "Yeah, your tremor disappeared the second time you started to breathe in." So I see myself as a bridge between what's going on and the challenges you face. And if the skills and the process I teach help, awesome. Or if they don't, or they only moderate it, see a registered professional. I'm a tour guide into the land of resiliency. We all need to understand we have that option, but I don't have all the answers. I've worked with people who have PTSD going, "Well, how come you taught me skills? Nobody else teaches skills." I said, at least in North America, certain experts are not allowed to teach skills. Their license says talk therapy or talk therapy and medication. So I saw this huge gap. And so that's me.
Well,
Wow, what a story.
Thank you.
yeah, I believe that all of us, every one of us has our own story. Just that you chose to tell it out and to inspire other people. That is really noble.
I have been given the gift of many people who have lifted me up. And so I think it's just, you pass it along.
I think we're all like made up of story, like in what Connie is saying, and it's really how we cast it. And actually, my heart, for years, I've been observing like people who made like a victim story part of their life or part of their life story, and maybe they make a job out of it, they sell something out of it. I don't know, but when I observe that people make that part of their identity and they have to like, I am a victim of abuse, or I am, they have to tell that story day in, day out. When that happens, I think that kind of like is a draining energy for them somehow, and somehow I feel that it is, after a while it becomes really dreary. Maybe they need that to tell a story of overcoming, but somehow it's almost like being stuck there in a story where they have to claim a kind of like a let go of energy, or
Like
I don't know, this empowering identity.
Yes, yeah, I say they're stuck in a rut. And a famous comedian years ago said, the trouble is being stuck in a rut. It's like being stuck in a grave. The only sunshine you can see is if you look straight up, but you don't know how to get there anymore because you've dug yourself in such a deep rut. There's no getting out. Yes, so it's self-limiting thinking. So I have a business card I made up, and it's all about the language of resiliency. I am resilient, but I know I don't know enough. So I need to reach out to other people like Connie. And Connie's got this infectious, upbeat, joyful, respectful attitude. And I understand she likes to dance on occasion too. So, she's been researching me. I noticed a dance video and I went, wow, she does that far better than me. And I have to take lessons before we hung out. So I have. And so what are the gifts in our life? Because if we have self-limiting, as you said, Julia, we're not looking for any of these things. We're stuck. And unfortunately, we start to attract others that are stuck with what I call the Eeyore syndrome. Well, I had cancer. It's really tragic. And it is. But how's that going to change things? And so I have. The research says I can, and I totally agree with the research. I can make a difference. But then the research stopped. And from coaching thousands of people and working with little kids too, which is the biggest honor. Oh, working with 3-year-olds. Oh, then I put down this action step. I do, because I've met a lot of adults that I am, I have, I can, but they never actually implement. There's no I do. So as I don't have a PhD and I don't have a licensing commission I have to answer to, I boldly added the I do. And that's where I say to somebody like Connie, can I practice with you? Because I have to implement, I have to do this like soon. And she'll say, sure, we can safely do this off screen. Oh, thank you, Connie, because I'm nervous, but I have to start. And so the getting started piece is what I've added, because in the research, they keep saying, well, some people just, I am, I have, I can, and they just went and did. Well, that's nice. But one expert told me less than 13% of us just do that naturally. And I was raised to have the I can and I do, but I have chronically ill folks that go, aren't you lucky you're resilient? I don't know. I spent maybe 18 hours going back and forth to the library to find the Harvard Medical School research from 1915 and 1969, and the best-selling book, Minding the Body, Mending the Mind. Love it, love it, love it. Dr. Joan Boryashenko. Wow, one of my heroes. I haven't met her yet. I'd like to in the next 5 years, because she's an expert doing research on mind body. And she has the courage in the beginning of the book to say, so I'm an expert, I'm doing this. What? And I start having migraines and there's nothing I can do. And then one day she says, wait a minute, I study this stuff. Why am I not using my own research? I love people who have the courage to admit they're as human as the rest of us. So,
absolutely.
Yes. So you're right, the victim story. It's good for a short period of time, but it gets in the way. And when we're willing to acknowledge our victim story and then turn it into a victory. I had a relative that was so loving of his spouse that the VP of nursing called my father and said, I know you know, your sister-in-law's here, and your brother, there's not a nurse on staff. They've all been to us that had taken about how well he's taking care of his wife. They all said, if we weren't married, we want one just like him. He's remarkable. However, he's here 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. So we want you to call him because we're approaching him tomorrow. So we want you to call him tonight, loosen him up, and you call, and we're going to see him tomorrow and sit him down saying 9 hours a day, because you're going to be a victim of your own love. Because often when somebody's had trauma and the family member, they care so much, they burn out. So the hospital got them aligned with the new schedule. You're not being a disrespectful spouse. We all love you to bits, to the point where some of us have gone home and said to our spouse, so I've met somebody that supersedes any other man I've ever met. And so in the process of that, the VP of nursing invited him for some discussions. And he'd been in World War II and had been injured physically and mentally. She created so much love and trust with him that he got the help he needed. And he became this man that I barely knew. It was amazing. He was always wonderful, but he found himself again. So he didn't have a victim story that he shared, but he had a victim story inside that he was stuck because of the physical, emotional injury of being in a war. So that's the one thing that I have learned, that some people's victim story, you can hear it from 50 feet away, but others, they're the quiet one in the room. And so I have learned that, wow, I never thought of him as a victim. And yet, because society said you have to be rough and tough, you have to go to war, you have to defend our nation, you have to free others, all valuable things that I'd like to think I would do at the right time and place, he came home and just kept it quiet. So, yeah. So I see resiliency as a bridge to get people to get unstuck out of their victim story, whether they're the quiet victim or the share it often victim.
I came across people like that, and those days I I just came to a realization one day that people like that, they are in their own comfort zone of being a victim, right? They
Yes.
will be telling you the same story over and over again, over and over again. You know, at first you feel that you would like to try to help, you know, yet they are not willing to make any changes. Okay, because they're so comfortable in their own victim stories.
It's well, I sat on the United Way board, and in Canada, United Way is a conglomerate and a clearinghouse. So they, small country town I lived in of 50,000 people. We had 120,000 people in the catchment area. We had 37 charities we raised funds for. But when you gave your money to United Way, yes, we keep 11%, but then we help the charities be productive with the money they get. And we also audit them, so you're very comfortable that that donation you gave was used for what we said it was. Somebody didn't go on holidays with it. So, and what I saw was, and what you just said, Connie, was the victim story, that 80+% of the people that used the services of the 30+ agencies were stuck. And so that was the other thing to get my resiliency going, was how can so many people be stuck? And then Dr. Helmstetter from Arizona wrote a book, and in the book he shares that something like 80% plus of what the average person thought in the 80s was framed in the negative. So to be serious and silly at the same time, oh, Connie, it's great you got Dr. Julia here, but she's a doctor. Could I be on a program with her? She's got more education than me. So that if I was a victim, but with my lived experience, thank heavens you got Dr. Julia on here, because she's got the academic credentials, and I feel safer because I never wish to do anything that's harmful, but I know that if I make a mistake, she'll fill in the gaps real fast. So
yeah, I think that's really it. It's like sometimes the kind of stories we tell ourselves can totally disempower us. It's totally put ourselves in a position where we are not able to open up and to receive gifts there are, and also to, especially when it comes to working with people. Yesterday I saw this note sent by someone that says that, oh, this person, someone said that I was intimidating or something like that. Not me, but this just says that.
okay.
You saw that one? It's like before with this statement, then somebody asked, it's like, is it you who is intimidating, or is she the one who is intimidated? So when we see that difference, we actually no longer take anything personally anymore, because it's nothing to do with, if we sell ourselves short by buying into stories of shortchanging ourselves by not being who we are, and always like probably looking out for how people are feeling from their perspective, then we are not being fully shining who we are. Instead,
Yes.
it is other people's stories of limitations that's operating. Yeah. So it's like depending on where we come from.
Yes, my mother should have been a sales coach, because as a 7-year-old, I got a paper route. It was the 70s, 60s, 70s. And she said, now when you knock on doors to get new customers, remember the person answering the door is doing you a favor. You're not doing them a favor, they're doing you a favor. So they could be busy, if it's a lady or a man, they could be changing diapers, they could be washing dishes, they could be making a meal, they could have lied down for rest after a bad sleep, they could be fighting the flu, they could be having a fight with their spouse. Lucky for you, your father and I get along very well, but not everybody does. So just remember, you're interrupting their day. Knock on the door and stand back and give them space. Take a deep breath, say hello. So I was blessed that my mother talked about different points of view, different frames of thinking, because when you're 6, 7, and 8, what do you know except your world? But my mother's like, well, if you want to be a businessman, let me tell you what I've learned from the people that knock on my door that don't understand my life. So you're absolutely right. Yeah, the stories.
When I did a Google search about the word resilience, right? And it is the same as what you have just posted on YouTube. You know, I subscribed to your YouTube channel today.
Thank you.
It was like resilience is the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties, toughness, tenacity, flexibility, right? I mean, it seems like it's so easy to say that. Basically, you know, when you fall so deeply and then you bounce it back. But when I watch your video, it seems like there is a process to that, right? So
Yes.
how does one, you know, like, because some people, they give up very easily,
Yes.
especially now when they are confined, like lockdown, and there's a lot of complaints, you know, there's a lot.
Or distracted.
Yeah. Yeah. So what do you have to say?
Upset, disappointed.
Yeah, the process of, like, you know, bouncing back.
Bouncing back to me is, first, to go back to the definition about bouncing back from adversity. I've been told by some well-intentioned people with a lot of learned and lived experience, and with not all, but a few with professional designations, that you can't talk about resiliency in cancer or other acute illnesses. And I said, well, actually, I believe that it's very appropriate in all situations, because yes, I had cancer, and yes, I might have physically died the first time. It was in 4 locations, stage 3s. It's serious stuff. But I still had my spiritual life, my social life, my emotional life, my family, my faith. And so if I'd have physically died 6 weeks in or 6 months later, ouch, I was only 26, 27. I wanted to live to be 80 to 95 or more. But I wasn't going to go down limping. I was going to die having cancer. The cancer was never going to own me. I was going to go, cancer, read between the lines. You didn't emotionally conquer me. You didn't spiritually conquer me. You didn't socially conquer me. I was going to leave a legacy like Terry Fox did in his way, of hope. Not to 20 million or 100 million people like Terry did, but at least in my family circle, because I believe we can leave each other a legacy. And socially, I was scared out of my mind. I had a phone bill of several $100, 400 and some odd dollars. I built a team the night before my surgery. I phoned 400 or 200 and some odd people. It's Michael. We haven't talked for 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years. I'm fighting cancer. Please write this address down. Send me a note of something good in your life. Don't want to know what's bad? Something good. How's your kids at school? Tell me how the flowers are. How your grandmother's doing since the hip surgery. And I got so many notes of positivity that the hospital said, should we know you? Are you a celebrity somewhere else and you've come to Halifax to hide out so nobody knows you here? No, I'm just a guy scared out of my mind. So I asked for help from my friends, coworkers, current and former neighbors and classmates. And I got hundreds of notes. My mother's neighbor, Betty, and church mate, now in her 90s, she sent me the most symbolic item. She sent me a hyacinth purple in full bloom, beautiful green leaves. She had them buy a gardening hat, to stick it in a gardening hat with gardening gloves. This is February, March now. So Michael, in late April, May, when it's gardening time, you're going to plant this, right? So she was giving me hope 8 weeks, 12 weeks out. Oh, my sales manager at the time, because I was a retail sales consultant, sent me in 1981 dollars this huge grape ivy, 2 feet of oh, it was just spectacular. And it was all shiny, waxy leaves. And by now my spirits are rising up. I've got Dr. Connie and the nurses on my side. The nurses were so much on my side. The VP of nursing came to see one of the nurses, and in front of me, she scolded her. He's married. What are you staying after work for? I just moved here 3 weeks ago. I'm lonely. Michael's just the same age as my brother, and he acts like my brother. It's kind of freaky, actually. It's like I've got 2 brothers. So I'm hanging out. I asked permission. It was wonderful. We had brother-sister communications. Anyways, she got me an IV hose that was used, mine. We taped it on my arm. We put it in the plant. It obviously wasn't really hooked up. And I went room to room, being the chatterbug social butterfly that I was, saying, it's a joke, but I'm pretending to have some grape ivy transfusions because it looks so alive. I'm going to be that alive one day. That plant lasted 3 years till I got transferred. It didn't make the air trip home. It was too cold to put in the moving van. Anyways, so you're right about people get stuck in silos or they get stuck in a rut. And we have to get over the stuckness because it's the only way to fully live. And with that research, about 80% of us plus see everything in the negative. It's a sad way to live. And one thing that I don't see talked about enough is how we inherit our belief systems often.
Yeah.
I was blessed that my father was very positive, realistic, but positive. And when I looked through what his family tragedies they went through from the age of 16 and on, profound. But the tragedies happened to the family after everybody in the family was old enough to have some coping skills. So teenagers and over. Whereas on my mother's family, the tragedies happened when everybody was young, under the age of 12, except for the parent that got killed and the brother that got killed. So grandma was only 6. So her, love you, Anne, her belief systems were really framed in fear and negativity because life came along and gave them a 1-2 punch out, the knockdown 3 days apart. Brother gets murdered in the workplace. Father dies looking in the workplace for where his son was killed. What's going on here? So my dad's family was upbeat, gently optimistic, often, despite all the adversities, whereas the other side was like, oh, life's tough, then you die, be careful. So it's the other thing about being resilient is sometimes you don't realize that 3 generations of family have done it this way, and be careful. Doesn't make them wrong, doesn't make them illegal or immoral, but it makes it really tough to break loose.
Yeah.
You know,
It's kind of like a family of origins
yes.
kind of
Yes.
script.
And if we're not careful,
how do
we
you-
inherit their anxiety too.
Absolutely. So how do we even become aware of these like overriding scripts?
Well, Connie talked about what's the process. So the process is start with awareness. So the very wise person who said many decades ago, start with the end in mind. And I have a kids and all age program. That's what that beach ball is all about. And start with calmness in mind. And if your personal culture, your family you were born into culture doesn't include calmness often, then I'd say you have to start with that. And when we start with calmness, again, I go back to Shaolin Kung Fu teaching me breathing skills. I was a smarty pants 12-year-old, so I didn't pay attention to my vocal teacher in the church choir and breathing skills. So I never achieved any good voice skills. My loss, their loss. Then again, some would say with my voice, maybe it's everybody's win. I didn't listen enough to my piano teacher who said you need to breathe better because then you would play better. My trumpet teacher, you need to breathe better so you can play better. You see the lessons that I didn't take, but I get Shaolin Kung Fu and I get a physical demonstration of a 129-pound man who's thin, to use old words, very wiry, not a muscle-bound guy, very thin but lithe. And the 240-pound policeman who's come to learn how to be more respectful to those he has to arrest. Because he said, right now, I got a nightstick, my fists, and a gun. This is early 70s. But all 3 of them are not always appropriate. Not everybody deserves any of those, but they're so distraught that that's the only way to keep them and the others safe. So he said, I want to learn how to keep myself, my partner, and the people I have to arrest or their family safer. Now, he was a very advanced man for the era. We still have people that don't understand what he was trying to talk about. I can't speak for other countries, but at least in my country, we still have a few in the police force that think that force is everything. But anyways, so he was a Golden Glove boxing championship, well skilled in the art of at 19 and then again in his 20s. So I meet him in his 30s and there's this 6'6" tall, handsome guy, and I'm 13 and I'm 140 odd pounds. And I'm like, I'm supposed to spar, play fight with him? Are you kidding? And my instructor is Michael, be calm. What have I taught you? You can shrink away from this or you can step into this. You shrink away, he's gonna, now sparring means he throws a punch and he touches me but not hurts me. Sparring means he touches my ear to show that he could have hurt me. Sparring means he could throw a punch or a kick and touch me but not hurt me. He said, he will get the first 3 points so fast you won't have a time to draw a third breath if you step away from it. But if you step into it, then he said, and I forget the officer's name, Tell Michael what you told me privately. Found out that my polite chatter, he found distracting. I'd say things like, nice haircut. Did your mommy cut your hair? I used distraction very well when I fought or sparred. And he said, he's only 13. He's fast with his mouth and he's fast with his feet. And I'm like, yeah, but I got a 31.5-inch arm. You got like 36 inches. You could put your hand on my forehead and I couldn't reach you. So it turns out we both had expectations of the other that made them appear more dangerous. So he turned out to be better at martial arts than me physically, but sparring with him, the ladies, and I grew up in a house where you never touched a lady, you never hit a lady, you except shake hands, and if they offered a hug, you hug back. But so for me to have a 25-year-old woman when I was 13 saying, okay, you and me, buddy, let's go out there and let's spar. I'm like, but you don't do that. So again, do you lean into the issue and do your best to succeed, or do you run away from the issue? And I found out when I leaned in, we both cycled up and learned from each other, and it was a better experience. So resiliency for me is acknowledge the issue, stretch into it, fear and all, acknowledge the fear, but square breathing, reframing things to learn after you've experienced it, or before you practice. The research about basketball players who visualized before they played, pre-framed it, they actually did better than the people who didn't practice at all. And they were almost as good as the people who physically practiced. So visualization is a very powerful skill. So stretch in, pre-frame, reframe, breathing skills, as opposed to acknowledging, because we don't always know we're stuck. So am I over here? Am I feeling bitter? Am I defending? And on the other side of the card, and it's in my Resiliency for Life group on Facebook, I give it away, is where are you? Are you defending? Let me put my glasses on so I can get you some more words here. Are you avoiding? I once had at the extreme end of not being resilient. I had a loving neighbor who avoided going for his diagnosed surgery for cancer. He died. He left a wife and left a pregnant woman at home. He was that terrified of surgery. So I got to tell you, I shook like a leaf before surgery, but again, my first doctor, surgeon. So Michael, no jokes. You have colorectal cancer. I've heard every bum joke possible. So if you're going to tell jokes, you're going to have to make new ones. So I get to OR. Any last words? Doctor, when this is over, will I be able to play the piano? Only if you've played before the surgery, Michael. It's a very old 1920s vaudeville joke that after this operation, doctor, will I be able to play the violin? Dr. Connie seemed to know every bad joke in the world. So if we're resisting, avoiding, assuming, demanding, if we're looking outward, because it's your fault, not mine, that's why this relationship isn't working, then we're probably stuck. And it's not nice to be stuck, but it's pretty human to be stuck. I got stuck moving from tricycle to bicycle. My dad had the patience of a saint. Took me 2 years to go from tricycle to bicycle. Michael, you know how to steer. You know how to pedal. It's the 60s, no handbrakes. You know how to go backwards to stop. You only got one more thing to learn. Balance, and I'll be here for you. Well, we lived on an old street, a new street with big gravel. It was hard to balance for this guy. So it took me 2 full summers. Although my mom did tease me when I became a teenager, your dad had, when he helped you learn how to ride, he sure had legs. Wow. He was running up and down the street like a marathoner. So yes, we can't get stuck. But if we know what stuck looks like, then we can make choices.
I love that your model takes care of a kind of like a reframing and perspective taking from different angles so that people can see themselves like a fish out of water, or I mean out of the fishbowl, just looking inside.
One of my goals is, and I can't speak for other countries, but North America, so many people have zero access to mental health. Zero. It's tragedy. I'm blessed that in Canada, it's not perfect, but at least for 70 to 80% of any of my health issues, I just go down the road to the hospital if it's an emergency and it's free. I mean, that's remarkable. And now that I'm of a certain vintage, and I say this with love to myself, but I love to tease people about age. And now that I'm officially crossed the line and I'm an old geezer because I'm past 60, I get certain medications at a big discount to manage my health. But the government found out if they give it to me at a discount, I still have to pay something. So I'm investing in my health, but it saves them a lot of money taking care of me if things go bad and get worse.
Mm-hmm.
So my friends south of the border have to pay $1,000 a month for my medications for their health issue that's the same. And I pay $50.
Wow.
And if I was really strapped at the poverty level, then I would get it probably for $4 to $10. So it's like 3 graduations when you hit a certain age of payment. Anyways, so yes, so my model is not to replace mental health professionals or social work professionals or addiction experts, but it's to help people realize, am I stuck? Yes. Dang, I'm stuck. Where did it come from? Oh, I had an auntie who was loving with her behavior. She would feed you like royalty, whether she knew you or not. She would get you clothes if you needed them. But open her mouth, I was the last person to visit her at 89 years old, except for her daughter till she died at 94. Not one of her nephews and nieces would have anything to do with her when they became adults. But she was my mother's sister, so I stayed in touch sparingly until she got vulnerable, and then I visited more often. But at 89, she could be so foul with words that I imagined my health one day tucking her over the balcony. I knew it was time to never come back. So her daughter, my cousin, was like, thank you for understanding about my mother. Thank you for looking out for her and caring for her. And I understand why you don't go back. I said, I can't take it anymore. I worked construction for a summer where I heard the foulest of language and she could keep up and supersede them. She just didn't know how to be kind. It's like, how can you feed me so well? How can you, when I was a kid, when my dad worked in aerospace, he had 3 years with no income because of strikes. He eventually left and went somewhere else. How can you make sure I'm clothed so well with so much love and unbelievable? And yet open your mouth? Whoa, it's too bad I got a pointy nose. It's kind of ugly. It's too bad you don't have enough teeth in the front. You're not handsome enough. It went on and on. So I just learned to love her, and I have an invisible Lexon shield. It's gently porous, but it only lets love and discomfort through, and there's no space for hate. And so I recognized that my shield wasn't working very well, because in my head, when she was really nasty and bigoted and racist, it was like, you should learn how to fly. And it was like, well, Michael, it's time to not come back. It's that we're done. It's like, well, you know, at the time I was 60 odd years old. I think I've done pretty good. You know, I would call her on her behavior and she would say, you just don't know anything about life. And I was like, okay, I'm dealing with somebody who's frozen in a belief system, not open to change. So I love you. And if she'd had an emergency, I'd have been there pronto, but she was, you know, she had home care. She had her daughter and her son-in-law, God bless them. But she was just extreme, and I'll never understand where she came from. It's like she certainly didn't fit in the family in any category. So yeah, we inherit it sometimes though. Luckily, my cousin has not passed that trait along. She did not buy into the belief system. So I think it's important that we know. So on my positive side, I talk about yielding. To be resilient, we have to be flexible. Again, for your listeners and viewers, I teased Dr. Julie about being on the beach today, and I want to be there. Yeah, but I'm not envious.
It's kind of windy.
It's a little windy. I'd need extra sunscreen, and I'd have to wear a hat because, you know, I got so much sunburn on my poor ear. I've had skin cancer, but it's still a nice place. And with some good sunglasses, you can appreciate the view even better. So yielding is important. Observing. If I meet Connie in person, will her exuberance and joyfulness intimidate me? Because, wow, she's like me times 2. Am I going to be jealous? And oh, she's got better dance moves than me. Or it's so nice to be around Connie because she lifts everybody up whose life she touches. I think I'll try for number 2. Not always easy. When I was 30 some odd years old and was new to desktop computing, my neighbor's 12-year-old son was so smart that he could do in 20 minutes for me when I had a difficulty what the guy that charged me $400 for a 2-hour trip did. And the father was like, don't you dare to give him any money. He's 12. You do community work. Consider this payback from the community. Well, he's 12. I'd slip him $55 for buy something as long as it's not illegal. You didn't get the money from me. But it was really humbling to have a 12-year-old be infinitely smarter than me, a better teacher, and a better teacher than the guy that charged $400, who was really good. So I've learned that I have to yield and observe, and it helps me be more resilient.
I'm hearing you having like positions where you can help people to reframe, to have awareness. When you mentioned the shield, is almost like what nonviolent communication, where Rosenberg says we try to hear the world from the ears of the giraffe, where we see past people's hurts and pains, and we just hear them from the eyes of love and the ears of love. But the thing is, the other, and later on you went on to talk about how to relate to people, so that you open up beyond your fears, so that you engage them so much more in terms of what they can offer, your own growth and expansion and appreciation as well.
Cycle up.
Yeah, it's a cycle up process.
Together, it gets faster.
Yeah, absolutely. So
and the opportunity.
Yeah, I think it's so rich. This model, it has values, it has perspective taking, it has really like inherent stances where you can help people to spiral up or to grow. But I want to ask you something. Like, how do we distinguish resiliency from denial, and then like from people like not knowing their boundaries, or like doing too much, or not with themselves?
Well,
yeah.
one of the phrases that I use with care, because you can jump to conclusions, is toxic positivity. If I just put my head down, jump on the treadmill, drink my water, and run, I'll run till I wear the machine out, and I will have accomplished.
Mm-hmm.
Well, somebody I know and love and since passed needed 2 artificial knee replacements because they ran so hard to try to manage another aspect of their health. So toxic positivity is we don't know our own limitations. So I'm diabetic.
Absolutely.
I'm not embarrassed by it, and I'm not proud of it. It's just, I'm told genetically, if your mother, grandmother, aunties, and great aunties all had it, you've got an 80+% chance you might have it. So I manage my weight. I exercise pretty darn good. I was within 5 pounds of my ideal weight, but at 60 years old, because of my history, I got tested every 2 years by my doctor. The doctor said, Michael, to use a non-medical term, you're pre-diabetic on the cusp. Your weight's within 3 to 4 pounds. I don't care. You shouldn't either, because perfection will make it worse.
Yeah, absolutely.
I attempt to live a life of excellence, not perfection. So he said, so
Yep.
You're on the right track. The goal is now, and I know you told me if you had an addiction, it's called dessert. He said, I know you don't have dessert with lunch and supper every day. He said, but I'm going to ask you to have 2 to 4 less desserts a week. And I said, absolutely. I said, that's my serious answer. My silly answer is no. But I once knew a very wise adult who said that the doctor, when he told her no desserts, was being mean to her. She ended up having a toe, then a foot, and then a leg amputated because she didn't manage her health. She actually took the diet restriction as the doctor picking on her. So it's really important to look at your perceptions and positions. Your POV, point of view, is really critical.
Yeah.
Because the doctor wasn't mean. He wants you to not lose your eyesight. He doesn't want you to have a stroke. He doesn't want you to lose your balance or lose a toe, or, as I like to talk to men over a certain age, he doesn't want you to lose sexual function, silly. That's why you're supposed to manage your sugar. That usually grabs them by the throat and makes them pay attention when I get asked to talk to chronically ill. So you're right. Point of view. And I go back to my sensei master. My father was very good at teaching me calmness. I was a tough birth, cord around my neck and tried to come out bum first. And my mom was like, I don't know, young man, but I got more attention from doctors in one day down there than I wanted in an entire lifetime. She said, you know, I
But
got married. I thought,
such a lucky thing. Yeah.
well, I'm glad to be here. I still have the forceps mark dint, and I still have this
Wow.
strangely shaped head where it got misshapen trying to get me out in one piece. But my dad spent the first few years of his life teaching me how to be calm his way. He'd take me for walks. So, Michael, we're on the edge of the forest. You see this pine tree, the one on the edge? Now, we know the wind comes from the west. So is this tree leaning into the wind or away from the wind? But don't answer, just think about it. Next trip. So we mentioned the tree leaning and wind. Is it leaning into the wind or away? Oh, Dad, it's leaning away from the wind. If the wind comes from there, and the tree's leaning this way, it's leaning away from the wind. Very good. Next trip. He's teaching me mindfulness and observation skills. Next trip, same tree. Now, moss likes coolness and dampness. This tree's got moss on this side, no moss on that side. I wonder which side of the tree gets more sunshine. Don't answer. Next trip. So did you decide which side gets more moss and more heat? Walk in 3 trees. The third tree in has a little bit of moss on the sunshine side that this tree doesn't, and lots on the other side, because this tree blocks that sunshine for the root. I was so blessed because he'd take me for walks and get me to stop, reflect, be calm, because in another family with my level of energy and some background anxiety maybe set at the birth because of fighting for your life, you know, you get told, oh yeah, your heart rate was 130 beats a minute for a long time that day. I teased Mother later that, who wants to get born? I had room service, didn't have to shower or shave, didn't have to go to the bathroom. You chewed all the food and you listen to good music with Dad. So it's really interesting to see how our temperament changes our life trajectory. Because if I'd have been a calm birth, and to quote a neighbor I had in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Michael, when I give birth, the kids almost fall out. And I'm sure there's a crass joke in there, but my family doctor, with permission, has made me part of the lecture series with a local university professor who, when they teach birthing classes, I'm the extreme. Never in the history of medicine in this province, or we'd say state, has a woman given birth so fast. It's more work for me to clean my kitchen floor on hands and knees with a tub of hot water than giving birth. Giving birth is easy. Her husband said, dear, 4 is enough of being easy, okay? They're expensive to raise and feed. But it was fascinating. She came to my house to talk to my spouse and I when my spouse was having our first, saying, I know you heard the horror stories. And I know that you've heard Michael's story about him and his mother and not having to chew his own food, so he didn't want to leave a nice place. But let me tell you, and I hope you have one like mine. And then she said, and off the record, and she looked at me and, don't you ever use my name. I learned after the first one, don't wear pantyhose because they can't even cut them off fast enough when you're in a merge because the baby's like almost swimming out like, I'm done, I'm ready. She said, I've had emerge room nurses saying, wow, this is like almost have no work here, except they started teasing her by the third one. They're going to bring a catcher's mitt. Tell us when the babies do. We'll bring a catcher's mitt to work that day in the merge. So belief systems, perspectives, attitude, point of view, surrounding yourself with people who don't judge you, but love you enough to tell you that we need to talk. Yeah. My mother's uncle was the guy that loved me so much that when I failed grade 9 through the probably anxiety and ADHD and other things, he phoned ahead. I didn't know he was coming. He showed up for dessert, and then he took me out for a walk and a talk. And now I get emotional because it takes a lot of courage for a 35-year-old man to talk to a 13-year-old, say, I made the following mistakes. Your father didn't make those mistakes, and he has the following benefits. I'll never have that again. I'm too deep into adulthood to go back to school. Now, we now know that he could have, but we didn't have the social supports at the time in the late 60s and 70s for an adult to go back to school, except for years. And so he talked about how he failed grade 9 or grade 10 and dropped out. So by 16, he said, I had a motorcycle and a leather jacket. Do you know how cool I was? And your father, within 6 months, was working with me. I made $1 an hour more than him. I had a motorcycle. Oh, wait a minute. He was working long distance. He had a trade. He was visiting his future as a trades professional. I had a motorcycle and a leather jacket. You know how empty that was within 3 years? He drove a cheap car. I drove an expensive car. Today, your parents own their house, plus some of the bank owns a bit. I own a car. That's it. I'll never get past this. I'm stuck. So if you could surround yourself with people who would tell you real polite, respectful truth and not hold you accountable all the time, but just, hey, what direction are you going? This one or this one? You going down or you going up? I have been blessed by having people like Mrs. Hogg in my grade 13 English class. Michael, nobody ever said you were an English scholar, but you always have the courage to take a risk to get an answer, and you get the whole class started. You have no idea as a teacher what a blessing that is, because I was taught that it's okay to be wrong, to make mistakes. So yeah, resiliency is, wow, it's been life-changing.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I wanted to develop these models and help people understand values with language, because so many people have no one to turn to. They can't afford anybody. So I've been to therapy close to 200 times, talked about my health, chronic and acute, talked about my divorce. It was very painful. Talked about my daughter. She's healthy now, but my daughter had a brain tumor at 7. I went to see, at the same time I was seeing a therapist about me and my feelings for my 7-year-old. I was seeing a therapist about how do I support the sister? Because the first therapist I was seeing about me, I felt she was a little emotionally overloaded and a little too engaged with me, not because she was unprofessional, but just because she heard my story and she cried. She found out about my daughter, she cried again. So I saw another person just to talk about helping the sister. Well, people are human. I was in a small community at the time. They knew I was volunteering for the United Way, and I'd helped bring Kosovo refugees here with the Red Cross. And I'd like to think I was at least average for supporting the community. And so the first one knew that. The second one didn't know of me, which was better. So I've been a couple hundred times. I have no shame in it because it's not a weakness. Going to see professionals helped me build up my mental muscles and fortitude, emotionally speaking, and helped me with my flexibility for points of view. Because I always went for somebody that was a different age than me, and it just happened to be that different gender. I didn't really care male or female, but it's like, who's open? Okay, I'm going to ask questions. I'm not, maybe you can't answer. Well, how old are they? Where'd they go to school? There was 3 schools that I'd been on the receiving end of care from. I really liked their professionalism, and there was one school where they all seemed to be nice, but not very. I'm not here for a chat. I'm here to ask myself tough questions and help you get me to reflect. So, anyways, that's why I do what I do for all those who can't get any help, can't afford any help.
Yeah, Michael, before we sign off, could you
Valuable.
briefly tell us about the book that you co-authored, 30 plus 1 resilience.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, the book. Yeah.
So one of the things I saw was, and it's perfectly normal, not everybody can relate to my story or your story or Julia's story, but I got 30 acquaintances to share a story of adversity and the outcome. And so that as you read it, the goal is to read it and recognize and reflect that here's 31 different people of different ages, genders, faiths, and we all went through something big. We've all come out the other side. So it's not supposed to be a deep read. Each story is about 1,000 words, but it's to get you to realize that, hey, this lady marries this gentleman, and within months, a stepson has a catastrophe. Oh, now I have 3 years of supporting this man I love, but we're certainly not having the dream couple time that 2 mature adults over 55 should be having. We're supporting this who's going through a fight to live, and it's not going well. So she shares that, and it's like, ouch, but she shares about how do we get through it. And one of the things she shares is we went for a long walk in nature. What a valuable thing to say. So I've teased you about the palm tree in the background, but I posted on my Facebook page the other day, I went to the local river and just stood on the bridge. Bridge is wood, metal, it's kind of ugly, but if you lean, you could ignore the bridge and just watch the water, and the sun ripples and reflects the trees. You're in a valley, so you don't hear the traffic sound unless the train comes across the trestle back up the path. So it's vital to know that others go through things and that we can go through things too and come out the other side, hopefully
Absolutely.
having learned from it.
I think that's wonderful. Yeah, and you've just inspired me. I think we can definitely do something here for our community as
I
well
feel the same
to
too.
build up. Yeah,
So
resiliency stories. Everybody has their personal ones.
And so the next book will then have an added piece. There's a book called Zap, written in the 80s by Byam. He's the expert. Cox was the writer. And Byam has my respect because he could have hired a ghostwriter. No. He's a Zap expert. Zap expert always acknowledge all the other experts around him. I'm a subject matter expert. I'm not a writer. Cox is a writer. So they wrote a bestseller. He's the subject matter expert, all about when we interact. Connie and I are lifting each other up, or one of us is trying to put the other down. So the book at the end of each chapter, which I want the next book to do, says, here's one thing in this chapter. So the book is a story by chapter. And then there's, at the end of the chapter, it's the end, but then it's, in this chapter we discussed, and it's like, so it makes it applicable. So currently I'm working on a 30+1 days of faith where we're going to take scripture from the Christian faith, and then we're going to talk about how do you make that to be resilient? Because as I've said to the lady I'm working with that I chose to work with, I heard a lot of good talking, but it's really hard to translate what you hear into doing. So this is, to quote an old phrase from my friend who drove a speedster car, this is where the rubber hits the road. Let's stop talking. Here's how we do the doing. So the I can and I do piece of resiliency as we walk in faith. And so that's the other thing I ask people to do. If you're going to interview people to build it for community, which I think is really important, can you, with them or after, say, did you notice this is one thing they did really well? How could you do that? So that brings up the other thing that I like to use is I got a book of quotes, not because those quotes are mind changing always, but the point of view in the book of each quote makes me go, how does that move me forward better? How does it get me to reflect that I could have done it better there and I will forward? Or how does that anchor me to just be calm and reflect and don't do anything? Right now, the best thing to do is nothing. So that's why I like quotes. I've had a couple of people with good intention tell me, well, quotes don't replace faith. I said, I never said they did. They supplement me in a way, because I find that if I'm not careful, I can say a prayer and it's just by rote. Yeah, I did it. Well, if I'm not fully present and in the moment with faith, then I'm not really practicing anything. I'm just going through the motions. So I like all these supplemental things that help pull me forward and push me forward at the same time. This is awesome. Thank you very much for this time.
And
No, thank you. So rich.
I hope to be back in Singapore, by the way, next year.
by the way,
I want to invite you earlier than that.
Well, we just have to find somebody.
No, wait. I would like to invite you earlier than that. I want to invite you maybe for next month, like not to
had my
come to
second shot
Singapore.
by then.
No, virtually.
Oh, well, virtually, absolutely.
Yeah. We are running a green and healthy festival for a charity organization that actually helps out chronic patients with chronic illnesses like cancers and so on. And we have a symposium going on, and I think you'll fit right in as one of the keynote speakers, right?
Well,
if you would like to come,
I would
talk
be honored.
about resiliency.
I have a PowerPoint presentation I can do at the same time. If you want the really logical one, or you can get stories one, and then I could send you the file. And if you have a printer, you can print them up and give them away. Oh, it's virtual though. There, never mind. Yeah, or you can just have it as a PDF for downloading. But again, I'm really big on we have to share. So I've got a program, the Beach Ball program, and that's about inner calmness and focus and concentration. And that's another discussion another time. Because if you don't have concentration and calmness, You're easy to manipulate and take advantage of. And there's so many lonely people these days that I get approached by that. It's just heartbreaking, of every age, every race, every income level.
Absolutely. So, and you know what? I'm very, very curious. Maybe every day, no, every time we finish our session, we will have a meditation. So I was wondering whether you would be open to lead us for today's like 5 to 10 minute meditation on that breathing cycle that you
I
talked
would.
about.
I have to just put myself on pause for a moment because it's hot weather now, and I went from 2 above to 32 above, and I'm over hydrating, and I need a break. I will be back very, very soon. Less than a minute.
Your ritual, tea and coffee. But anyway, I would really
Connie,
I would like to acknowledge,
Connie,
thank our friends
yeah.
with us today, Evelyn. Hello, Evelyn and Brenda.
Brenda, and also our friends tomorrow who will be listening in. Maybe today, you know, they missed it, but I think this is so rich for you out there who are working on yourselves, on difficult situations and challenges that you want to overcome. Or at least if you hear Michael's stories, I hope that they will inspire you the same way as it has inspired us, right, Connie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Brenda, Evelyn, and Mark, do join Michael's page, Resiliency for Life. Look out at the
Absolutely.
Facebook page. Thank you, Evelyn. Thank you for always supporting us.
Yeah. Connie, are you coaching with Michael right now?
Say again.
Are you coaching with Michael right now? Learning coaching tips and tricks?
No, not yet. Not yet.
Oh,
Nice, right? Today's session.
surely.
I love it.
Oh, I
So
love it.
much.
I love all the stories that he had to tell. Like such rich stories, isn't it?
We all have our own stories to tell. It's just that we didn't tell it outright. I'm sure you too
Yeah.
have. Yeah, your story of resilience.
grandmother stories. Yeah. Story of resilience chewing through a piece of tough leather.
Michael,
right.
cheers. You know what are you having? Are you having tea or coffee?
Today, this is I've had 2 large ones of water with lemon, and now I'm cheating as it's coffee, iced coffee. The ice is melted because I'm drinking it slowly. I have very low blood pressure, and one expert said, "You need blood pressure pills." I said, "No, I just need 4 ounces of coffee in the morning. It gives me a little lift. Blood pressure's good. Then I have another little small cup after lunch, and I'm good the whole day." And I know what caffeine does. And there's no counterindicators with any other medication. And it speeds up my insulin a little tiny bit, and we're good to go.
Mm-hmm.
If I know my body, don't you try to give me more medication.
Smart.
So I would like to teach, there's lots of people that teach diaphragmatic breathing. And if you see my materials at some point, which I'm sure you will, you'll see that I don't call it that. I call it belly breathing. Now, I've been asked and blessed to work in nursing homes and seniors homes a few times, which is great. And I love to tease them that at one point we got told in Canada that we should always have, for emergencies due to weather, 3 to 7 days of food on hand. So then I go, and I carry mine right here. No cupboards required. So
oxygen tank. Oxygen tank.
So belly breathing, diaphragmatic breathing is very powerful. But for many people, when they're anxious, they can't draw a breath that deep. And so to put my toe in the door of their minds to help them, I learned this technique that I'm told they teach military, first responders, and emerge room professionals. And it's called many things. There's cube breathing, box breathing. I call it square breathing, just because you can draw it on a chalkboard and it's simple. And square You draw a square, you don't even have to understand the language. So I'll take you through square breathing 3 times, and that should finish us up. So thank you for the gift of time. And so square breathing. So imagine a square. We're going to start in the top right corner. And I'd like us to breathe in on 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I want you to hold it for 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004. We've come across the bottom of the square. Now we're going to go up the other side of the square, and you're going to exhale 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004. Now you're going to come across the top of the square, and you're going to breathe in 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004. Now you're going to hold it and come down the side of the square, 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004. Now you're going to let it out, 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004. Now you're going to breathe in 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004. You're going to hold it across the top of the square, 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004. And now you're going to let it out, 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004. You could come back in the present moment and open your eyes.
Wow.
There a couple of times. So I was a big fan from Shaolin Kung Fu on diaphragmatic breathing because it really calmed me down. But what I was taught by some of my coaching clients was it didn't work for them all the time. If they were going up in anxiety, or with my neighbor when she collapsed on the ground, foot was tremoring, her diaphragm was tremoring, her arm was tremoring. So I just said, we're going to practice square breathing. Brought her down, brought her across, brought her up, gone. We weren't 12 seconds into the practice and it was done. So then we took her around one more time. I said, how do you feel? That's really powerful stuff. Well, I've been talking about it for years because between the 3 of us, I suspect she's had some anxiety issues her whole life. None of my business because she didn't share. But now she shared, I can't stop the tremor. I said, yes, you can. I'm sure you will. So I know from my hypnosis lessons that we were going in trance together, and not to take over her mind, just to help her achieve a state of calmness so she can better communicate when the first responders showed up and better take care of her emotional, physical, mental health while she was waiting. And it's amazing that this is somebody that's had some memory issues, but it's been 3 days. And when we talked last night, that square breathing stuff really works. It's like, wow, you forgot all about where you fell down, but you remember the breathing piece. It really, and so I've shared with her family the PDF of the square breathing. And I already got a letter from outside of Canada, this long letter saying, Michael, you don't know me very well, but I practice breathing because of the following issues, and my hypertension's gone away, but nobody's introduced me to square breathing. Dang, that stuff's powerful. Said, well, there's dozens of ways, and unfortunately for those of us raised in Western culture with Western medicine, breathing, what's that? That was my music teacher, which I didn't listen to. My other music teacher. Show me a 129-pound man who scares 240-pound men. Suddenly the teenage boy went, I can do this. Anyways, thank you.
We need to thank you. I'm sure both of us have, learned so much from you, and I am truly inspired further. And our audience thank you as well.
Yeah.
My son Mark said Toronto is his favorite city. He went to school there for 15 months.
Oh, well, if he comes back, I expect that we'll get together for a hot or a cold coffee.
Oh, I think he would love to.
Yeah,
That would be great.
absolutely.
Well, you see, I have learned that almost always when you meet one smart member of the family, the other ones are generally the same.
Thank you. That's a compliment.
So we'll see you very quickly.